So it's good to be here. I kind of rail against any form of kind of bureaucracy, any form of kind of formality, particularly when it's on the internet. I don't like it at all. Whenever I go to book a doctor's appointment, I do it online. And they ask me to confirm my booking, and when they ask me to, they ask me to enter the reason for the appointment. And this really annoys me, so I just wrote, concerned I'm going to die. And they wouldn't give me the appointment. And so next time, I just wrote, death is inevitable. And then they did give me the appointment, but that meant I had to spend the next 20 minutes explaining to the doctor that I was not suicidal. She said, but you've written death is inevitable. I said, it is. They should have told you this on day one. And then she was quite flustered. So I think what she wanted to say was, like, have you had suicidal thoughts? But I think she got the wording wrong, because she said, have you considered suicide? I didn't even know that was an option. A number of years ago, I went to see a therapist, obviously. And thanks, guys. Thanks for your support. And when I went to see that, I wanted to speak to someone, but instead of being able to speak to someone, what they gave me an adult intake assessment form. It was a form, this is it, an adult intake assessment form. And I was like, well, okay, great, but I just want to speak to someone. But the first question on the adult intake assessment form was, what do you consider to be the top 3 stresses in your life? And I was like, well, number 1 is obviously adult intake assessment forms. That's right up there. And then number 2 was obviously the formal classification of ineffable and principally subjective thoughts for the purpose of generalized psychometric analysis. And then airport security. And I turned over the page, expecting that to be the end of it. But no, there was another form, and this one was even worse. It was like a multiple choice form. Like, how am I supposed to, why can't I just speak this? Anyway, so it was like, okay, question number 1 was, how often do you misplace things at home? And I was like, often. And then it was like, well, how often do you have difficulty getting things in order? And I was like, rarely. But then I realized that I actually had some difficulty, and I'd actually got them in the wrong. And then the next one was like, how often do you make careless mistakes when you have to work on a boring or difficult project? And I was like, well, absolutely never. How often do you find yourself unable to make decisions? Sometimes. But then I realized, I don't. How often do you have trouble wrapping up the final details of a project? Well, I started to wrap it up, but then I stopped, halfway through. And then the last question was, when you're in a conversation, how often do you find yourself finishing the sentences of people? I was like, literally all the time. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.